Good morning and welcome to Early Start. I'm Christine Romans.
I'm John Berman. It is Wednesday, January 6, 4 a.m. in the East.
This is CNN Breaking News.
And the breaking news, North Korea says it exploded a hydrogen bomb. This is the very first time the reclusive regime has made such a claim. Yes, it has done nuclear tests before, but those were for more crude fission devices. A hydrogen bomb, a fusion device, would be a huge escalation in their capabilities and present huge new challenges for the U.S. in terms of security. If it in fact was a hydrogen device, that is in question this morning. The apparent underground test set off political tremors around the world all night and prompted an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council set for today. Joining us with the very latest, CNN's Will Ripley, live from Beijing. At this point, Will, what do we know?
Well, we know that the list of countries that are condemning this action by North Korea continues to grow, not only here in China, the United States, Japan, South Korea, the United Kingdom, France. The list goes on. There's a lot of global concern about this test. If indeed North Korea did test a hydrogen bomb, this is hundreds of times more powerful than, for example, the bomb that was dropped back in 1945 on Hiroshima and the bomb that was dropped on Nagasaki. This is a very, very dangerous explosive device that North Korea says it would use to defend its sovereign territory. Of course, that's been the regime led by Kim Jong-un's defense for developing their nuclear program all along. But what the United States has been doing, certainly since President Obama took office, is a policy known as strategic patience, hoping that because of pressure from sanctions and whatnot, that North Korea would choose to denuclearize on its own. But in fact, the reverse has happened. The North has continued to aggressively spend money developing its nuclear program. They have a lot of raw uranium. They have the potential to build even more warheads. They're miniaturizing warheads. They're developing their missile capabilities. Listen to what the former U.S. ambassador to South Korea has to say about this policy.
I'm not sure saying we're going to respond with strategic patience is really going to get us very far. So I think what we're going to have to do is there'll be a discussion in the UN. There'll be an effort to tighten sanctions. There'll be, I think, further effort with regional countries, including China. And I hope there'll be some understanding that we have to somehow retard this program in the way that we did with the Iranian program. And so I think we're going to have to really think very hard about what to do, because we can't just leave this one alone.
A lot of experts are saying that the sanctions clearly haven't worked. In spite of really crippling economic penalties, the North Koreans have continued to invest in their military and specifically in their nuclear and missile programs. Now, about 7 hours from now, the United Nations Security Council will be holding a closed-door session. It was requested by the U.S. and Japan, John. A lot of countries trying to figure out what to do next to prevent this situation from escalating further.
You know, in terms of technical aspects, Will, what is known this morning? There is confirmation there was some kind of tremor felt, on the 5.1 magnitude, but have they confirmed? What are the South Koreans saying about what kind of device they believe it was?
Yeah, and 5.1 is stronger than the tremor, which was, I believe, a 4.1 back in 2013. Still no evidence, of course, that this was an H-bomb, as North Korea claims. Japan has sent two aircraft, actually, up to try to detect radiation. South Korean experts are casting doubt on these claims, and so it'll take perhaps several days, according to officials in the United States and elsewhere, to confirm if indeed this was a hydrogen bomb. But clearly, whether it was an H-bomb or not, the North Korean nuclear program is continuing to grow. And that is what is so alarming, because on Friday, it is Kim Jong-un's 33rd birthday. Whether the timing is coincidental or whether this was done as sort of an early birthday present for the Supreme Leader, we simply don't know. But a 33-year-old with his hand at the button of a growing nuclear arsenal, and a lot of people are saying that what he's really trying to do here, he doesn't want to launch a missile. He wants a conversation, a sit-down with world leaders. He wants to be recognized as a legitimate leader, and really, ideally, they want normalized relations with the United States.
I was just going to ask you, Will, why now? Little seems coincidental when it comes to the North Korean regime. And when he wants to sit down, when he wants an audience, what does he want to talk about?
Well, because really this is a country that doesn't have a whole lot of bargaining chips, but their nuclear program and their growing arsenal is a bargaining chip, a very strong one, perhaps their strongest. As far as their military goes, they have more than 1 million standing troops, but a lot of their weapons are outdated. So you see them investing in this missile technology. You see them investing in nuclear technology. Kim Jong-un gave his New Year address. It was a 29-minute speech. He didn't mention the nuclear arsenal specifically, but what he did talk about is the need to continue developing weapons to defend the sovereignty of North Korea. And he also talked about wanting to grow the North Korean economy. They've had a two-pronged approach. They're investing in their military, but also trying to grow their economy. And they feel that won't really be able to happen unless they're able to sit down at the table with the international community and talk about ways to bring North Korea back into the fold. So what do they have to offer now? They've just done this nuclear test. They're certainly not going to give up their nuclear program. That's the indication that I've gotten from officials. I visited 5 times to Pyongyang in the last year and a half or so, and they say the nuclear program isn't a bargaining chip. But some analysts have been telling me perhaps a moratorium on further testing could be something that they could offer. And really, this is one of the few things that Pyongyang does have to offer. We'll have to really watch closely to see how this all unfolds, John.
All right, Will Ripley for us in Beijing, and of course, remember South Korea, North Korea. They had another shouting match over the border this weekend. They were shooting, and in fact, playing speakers over the border. So a very tense situation there now with the introduction, perhaps, of a hydrogen bomb test makes the situation even more precarious. Will Ripley for us in Beijing. Thanks so much.
We'll have to see what this means for China, how China will respond, because, China has a leader only of the last year or so. What this means for relations between those two countries, clearly this is a provocation for China. Mm-hmm. China's been trying to contain this sort of behavior from its neighbor. So a lot to unfold here on the diplomatic front. Why now and what next? The two big questions regarding North Korea this morning. And we want to get back to our breaking news this morning. North Korea's nuclear test. I want to bring in John Delury, Associate Professor at Yonsei University Graduate School of International Studies. 2 questions. Why now? What next? Your reaction first to this claim by North Korea that it has exploded a hydrogen bomb.
Yeah, well, it's more than a claim insofar as they've exploded a nuclear test from everything we can, or staged a nuclear test from everything we can tell. The hydrogen part is still sort of up in the air, and it may take a few days before we know about that. But it's quite a statement, and North Korea, of course, likes to be in the limelight, and so they put themselves back on our headlines. No one really has a clear way forward, though, and that's the problem.
A hydrogen device. Explain to me why that would be different than the 3 other tests we've seen over the last several years.
Well, there's, the technical answer, you'll have to get a serious nuclear expert to walk you through it. But what it boils down to is it's a much more powerful device. It's really bringing them up to par with the other nuclear powers. I think, symbolically speaking, the most important dimension to it is that the new leader, Kim Jong-un, has a stated strategy of what's in Korean called Byongjin, to simultaneously make progress in 2 areas. One area is economic development, which sounds okay. Unfortunately, the other area is the nuclear weapons capability. And so by claiming, whether he has or has not, by claiming he's conducted a hydrogen bomb, he's able to demonstrate, at least internally, that he's delivering on this promise of actually improving their nuclear weapons deterrent, as they think of it.
What does he want? Does he want legitimacy? Does he want an end to sanctions? Does he want relevance? Is this ego? What do you think is the end game here for this 33-year-old leader?
Yeah, it's a great question. We need to get into his head more. If we had a little bit more diplomatic contact with North Korea, we'd probably have better estimates to that. I mean, as you know better than anyone, Dennis Rodman is the person, who spent the most face time with this young guy. So even the Chinese are really in the dark and are guessing a lot about Kim Jong-un. So, actually the bottom line is we don't know enough about his calculations, how he thinks. I think it's more than just trying to get attention, although that's certainly part of North Korea's playbook. I don't think this is a move to sort of provoke their way into negotiations, at least with the United States. I think the North Koreans are quite realistic that the Obama administration is long past being interested in talking to them. So, and also in terms of South Korea and China, the other key countries, this is obviously upsetting to both leaders in Beijing and Seoul and makes it harder for those leaders to engage even economically with North Korea. So when you check off all of those options, you're sort of left with the domestic politics of this. And I think we have to infer from this that Kim Jong-un thinks this is good for his consolidation of power, good for the security of his regime, and maybe even of the country, as he thinks of it.
You said earlier, even Beijing, even China is confused or doesn't fully know what's going on inside. What about China? Because China has a complicated relationship with North Korea. Xi Jinping has, is early in his regime trying to figure out how to deal with North Korea.
Yeah, historically, it's a real, the fluctuations of that relationship are something that go all the way back to the Korean War and even before the Korean War back in the 50s. So we're seeing sort of another cycle of this drama that's often hidden from view. Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping got off to a bad start, in part because of the last test, which Kim Jong-un did right after Xi Jinping came to power and was an egg in the face for Xi. They were just starting to sort of repair the damage and mend the fence actually in the fall. And there was a very high-profile trip by one of Xi's top leaders to Pyongyang in October, and that was seen as potentially a big breakthrough. This obviously sets that all back. Kim Jong-un is sending a clear message to Beijing that says, I don't need you, I'm not looking to please you, I'm my own man. That may be very popular in North Korea. That may be something that at least North Korean elites, if not North Korean people, like to see, a very strong, independent young guy. We don't know about that, but that's a possibility that we have to entertain. So the Chinese are really left on the back of their feet, and it'll be interesting to watch Xi Jinping try to handle this. He's in a real diplomatic corner now.
Yeah, as you said, that relationship now back in the freezer. John Delury, Associate Professor at Yonsei University. Thank you so much for joining us. Great analysis. Thank you.
Big developments in the Korean Peninsula this morning.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.